Bonjour et bienvenue à toutes et à tous. My name is Ryan Waldron. I'm Director of Cultural Programs at the Alliance Française de Chicago, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's World Monuments in Paris lecture on Saint-Eustache Church, featuring Véronique Milande, Chief Heritage Curator and Manager of Religious and Civil Artwork Conservation, and Paul Percetti, Sponsorship and Partnership Manager, both with the City of Paris. Now, before we set off to the City of Light, a reminder that we're using a Zoom webinar format today. That means you'll only see the guest speakers, but please do use the Q&A feature to ask your questions. They'll be answered by our guests at the end of the talk. You're also welcome to use the chat to communicate with your fellow guests. Go ahead and give it a try. You can let us know where you're listening from. This program is presented as a partnership between the Alliance Française de Chicago and the Alliance Française Miami Métro, with communication support from World Monuments Fund, the French Heritage Society, and the Fédération des Alliances Françaises aux États-Unis. The series is made possible thanks to the generous support of Solange and Bill Brown. Now, a word about Saint-Eustache Church. Situated in the historic neighborhood of Les Halles Food Markets, Saint-Eustache continues to bear the memory of the merchants and guilds who surrounded the second largest church in Paris after Notre Dame. Constructed in 1532, between 1532 and 1637, the church reflects the Gothic flamboyant style with Renaissance elements. Modifications to the facade continued until the 18th century, and after being damaged by fire in 1844 and again during the Paris Commune of 1871, Saint-Eustache was completely restored by the city architect Victor Baltard, who supervised both the restoration of the early interiors and the conception of a new Art Nouveau iconographic program for the mural painting throughout the space. Today, Saint-Eustache is home to a number of artistic masterpieces, and World Monuments Fund supported the City of Paris in restoring the church starting in 2021. Lastly, a few words about our dear friend Russell. Russell Kelly is the curator and moderator of the past 4 winters lecture series. He's lived in Paris for 30 years, and he is the author of The Making of Paris, the story of how Paris evolved from a fishing village into the world's most beautiful city. We are most grateful to him and his team, especially Patricia Bonin and Stéphanie Grosjean, for all of the work that's gone into organizing this series, and we're truly delighted to have had the opportunity to partner with them again this year. À vous, Russell.
Thank you very much, Ryan, and welcome, bonjour, from sunny Palm Beach, Florida. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers, Véronique Milande and Paul Percetti. Véronique Milande is the Chief Heritage Curator with responsibility for the conservation of religious and secular works of art for the City of Paris. She first studied pharmacology and then made a radical change in direction and studied art history and the preservation and restoration of cultural works. She's taught at the University of Paris and at the École du Louvre and published many works, including one about the decor of the Saint-Eustache Church in 2019, which will come in handy today, I dare say. Paul Percetti is responsible for fundraising and sponsorship for the Cultural Affairs Department of the City of Paris. He has a master's degree in public affairs from the Institute of Political Sciences, known as Sciences Po in Paris, and a degree in the history of the City of Paris from the Sorbonne. Both Véronique and Paul are attached to the Cultural Affairs Department of the City of Paris because all 96 churches in Paris are owned by the City of Paris. The Cathedral of Notre Dame de Paris, along with all other cathedrals in France, on the other hand, is owned by the French state. In February 2024, Saint-Eustache celebrated 800 years since the first Paris church was built on the site, dedicated to Saint-Eustache, who was martyred by the Romans in 118 AD. As Ryan said, Saint-Eustache is the second largest church in Paris by some measurements, after Notre Dame. Interestingly, Notre Dame de Paris was the very first Gothic church built in Paris, and Saint-Eustache was the very last Gothic church built in Paris, nearly 400 years later. First, Paul will talk about the architecture of Saint-Eustache, and then Véronique will discuss its interior decor. À vous, Paul et Véronique.
Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will share our screen now. Okay. Thank you very much for your invitation, Véronique, and I will try to summarize the history of this imposing and majestic building in the center of the French capital, not far from its big sister, Notre Dame Cathedral. Its spectacular dimensions dominate Les Halles district. We apologize in advance for any words we may mispronounce, especially the more technical ones. Saint-Eustache is, above all, a meeting place between the history of France and a simple parish church, between a very intense neighborhood life and what it represents politically or historically. The church boasts remarkable architecture, which we're going to talk about, and an exceptional artistic and intangible heritage. First of all, let's talk about the church's origin, which go back a very long way. On the site of Saint-Eustache Church, there was originally a simple chapel, already located in a district at the heart of a new city's commercial and food exchanges. Indeed, most of the ancient city was located on the left bank of the River Seine, and Saint-Eustache was and is on the right bank of the River Seine. The first building, bearing the name of Sainte Agnès, adjoined a public market that had existed since 1135 and was called the Champeaux Market, les Halles des Champeaux. Throughout the Middle Ages, the market grew in importance. The royal power, which was located not far away on the Île de la Cité, at the very center of Paris, encouraged and favored the installation of craftsmen and merchants on this site. Until the end of the Middle Ages, les Halles des Champeaux, as you could see on this slide, became an increasingly important crossroads for economics and social exchange, even during the wars or the epidemics that struck the region of Paris in the 15th century. Unfortunately, we have very few sources on the building from this period. The church was built as the neighborhood expanded in a very dense and chaotic urban environment, as Parisian streets were before the great urban transformation of the 19th century with Napoleon the First, then Napoleon the Third, and all, for example, the Haussmann architecture. So back in time, in the 13th century, Paris became not only one of the most densely populated cities in the West, but also a major pilgrimage center with the arrival of the relics of the Christ's Passion, for which King Louis IX, most commonly known in France as Saint Louis, had the Sun Chapel built on the Île de la Cité. Traces of that era are barely visible today around the church, Les Halles district being one of the most transformed of Paris during its history. However, the former urban density of the district can still be seen if you look at the north face of the building. So you have a detail from a map of 1552, and you could see a triangle of the north facade of Saint-Eustache. So you have the Rue du Jour and Rue Rambuteau and Rue Montmartre. And that's the triangle that still exists today, as you can see here. So in the north, Saint-Eustache is surrounded by multiple buildings forming a triangle between Rue du Jour and Rue Montmartre, making it impossible to get a good view of the church by this side. So the destiny of Saint-Eustache changed radically with the reign of King François I, François Ier. Indeed, he decided to make the Louvre fortress his main residence, and he had to old keep demolished and began a new kind of construction project, transforming the ancient medieval fortress into a Renaissance palace. In 1532, he laid the foundation stone for a new Saint-Eustache church located just a few hundred meters from the new palace. As you could see, La Cour Carrée du Louvre, the square courtyard of the Louvre, the new aile of the Louvre of the period of François I. His idea was to mark Paris, by building a church that would be the largest parish church of the capital, competing Notre Dame Cathedral. A sign of its symbolic importance, the new church architecture will be marked by several symbols of the French monarchy. So you can see the square of the Louvre and Saint-Eustache at the very top of the photo. And so you can see some symbols of the French monarchy, notably the fleur de lys, of the top of the stained glasses, and the hearts, which are visible in the stained glass windows in the lower section of the church. I think I have a second photo. So indeed, you can see some hearts in stained glasses. The architectural style of the building is a unique blend of purely Gothic structure, inherited from the tradition of the Middle Ages, particularly from the 15th century, and a new kind of decoration inspired by Italy and antiquity. The project called for the construction of 48 pillars, rising the heights of 15 to 25 meters, creating a stunning effect that attracts the eyes to the vaults. Nevertheless, if we look at these pillars, we can see the antique style ornamentation in an architecture structured like a Gothic cathedral. For example, the omnipresence of the flying buttresses, which keep the church upright, or the ogive crosses, which supports the vault. The Gothic structure is richly decorated with sculptures imitating ancient temples, such as mascarons and Corinthian columns. In the symbolic hierarchical order, these columns are the most prestigious, reserved for the city's most important buildings, such as palaces or churches. The Gothic pillars are decorated with fluted pilasters and mascarons that animate the architecture and give rhythm to the viewer gaze. The pillars are also decorated with geometric motifs, such as lozenges, which dots the nave. As you could see, Renaissance-style interior decor with fluted pilaster and these Corinthian columns and mask all around the church, inside the church. Finally, the keystones are spectacularly ornamented, decorated with angels' wings and heads. They can measure several meters in height. The building work did not begin with a facade, with a traditional facade, as it was traditional to finish with this part of the building, in particular to avoid destroying parts of the old church and allow religious celebrations to continue. So, in the absence of this western facade, the main entrance to the church was via the southern portal, as you could see now, which opened onto the Rue des Prouvaires, Street Prouvaires. This is a central portal framed by two stairs turrets, as you could see. Here we can observe the use and taste for geometry by Renaissance architects, lozenges, miniature architecture, the abundant details of the flamboyant Gothic architecture are preserved, but in a more refined form, in a more modern form. Its decoration is a very true masterpieces of Renaissance sculptures in Paris. You could see some details from the exterior Renaissance facade. So the king wanted a huge church, and its rivals Notre Dame, as can be seen in the next two slides, I think. So we have this view in this interior view of the nave, very spectacular, because the vault raises to the height of over 35 meters. And you could see this keystone of the core falling to over 4 meters. We can compare it with other church in Paris. So it's the most impressive of the building, a spectacular work of art. So the king wanting a huge church, in comparison with Notre Dame, is very interesting because the dimensions of Saint-Eustache is not far from Notre Dame. You have on this slide the longer and the wide of Saint-Eustache, and to compare, I have added the Notre Dame facade, it served as model for the construction of a new church, by the way. So as you can see, this. So between 1542 and 1586, the transept, nave, and part of the north ambulatory were built. And at the beginning of the 17th century, work began on the western facade. But as we will see later, it was completely rebuilt in the 18th century style, in a radical different style. Construction of the core was completed between 1615 and 1640, at the end of the wars of religion between Catholics and Protestants. This was a very long construction period due to the scale of the project and its considerable financial cost also. So the project to complete the facade was not restarted until 1750. The previous facade, so you could see this detail from a Turgot map of Paris, and you could see the oldest facade, unfinished. Also in these details, fabulous details of an evangelary of Saint Eustache. So it's painted on a skin of animals, I think it's a belt. And you could see some of details very, very interesting of the oldest facade, which no longer exists today. The western facade before its reconstruction. And another picture of that. So the project to complete the facade was not restarted, as I said, until the middle of the 18th century. Sorry. So the previous facade with its unfinished tower has been excavated in 1665 to accommodate 2 additional chapels. It was commissioned by Colbert, the minister of Louis XIV, the king's son. This excavation leading to the threat of the facade collapsing. So the church, Saint Eustache, as commanded by Jean Mansart de Jouy, then Pierre-Louis Moreau, 2 architects, to build the new facade in a style radically different from the rest of the building. The Renaissance style had fallen out of fashion in the 18th century, with a pediment, un fronton en français, imitating Greek or Roman temples, as you could see. However, the project was not without its problem, with its own problem. The South Tower was never completed because when the French Revolution broke out, and has not been rebuilt since, leaving Saint Eustache with an asymmetrical appearance now. So the facade was being restored in 2020. As you could see, very, very white, very, very pure, in a classical style. So I would like to talk about now about the neighborhood of Saint Eustache, because Saint Eustache is very linked to Les Halles, the district of Les Halles. As a result of its intense commercial activity, the district was profoundly modified on several occasions. In 1542, Kings François I and François I drew up the city's first urban development plan since Roman times. So it was a huge project. The king ordered the destruction of wooden houses in the district of Les Halles to be replaced by stone buildings. He wanted to enlarge and magnify these places in the heart of the city, as also an affirmation of his royal power. The enlargement of the church, the embellishments of its surroundings, because, for example, in 1542, you have the construction, the starts of construction not far away of the Fontaine des Innocents, the Innocent Fountain, and the new Louvre with its new facades, all benefited the district. So they attracted also luxury businesses linked to court life in the Louvre. After that, a new reorganization of Les Halles took place during the 17th century because of the multiplication of commercial activities and the growing number of Parisians frequenting the Halles had created chaos in the center of town. So les Halles were also located next to a big cemetery, le cimetière des Saints Innocents, which was causing serious health problems for Parisians because the cemetery was so full of dead body that pestilential smells were spreading throughout the neighborhood. So that was a very big issue. In an attempt to eliminate this chaos, the city of Paris and Louis XVI decided to move the cemetery and charnel house were moved from Les Halles in 1785 to the catacombs of Paris. And a fruit and vegetable market was set up in its place. An imposing wheat market was also built, slightly apart from the food market and the cemetery. This wheat market was completely rebuilt during the 19th century in 1887, from 1887 to 1889, to house the new Bourse du Commerce. So during the 19th century, Napoleon first ordered the construction of the new buildings to shelter goods from the rain. So as you could see here, the Marché des Prouvaires, that was the decision of Napoleon first. And then in 1851, Napoleon's nephew, so Napoleon III, commissioned architect Victor Baltard to build lightweight structures much taller than the older one. This building let light into the market and brought some order of the flow of goods. So between 1854 and 1866, 10 cast iron pavilions were built by Victor Baltard. This architecture, very modern for its time, was widely imitated in France and Europe. And you could see with this photo, these 10 pavilions of Les Halles de Baltard, and Saint-Eustache at the left of the photos, with one tower and finished facade, and La Bourse du Commerce, the rotund buildings. So after that, Les Halles were the economic heart of the city, at the very heart of Paris, near the City Hall of Paris, near Notre Dame Cathedral. Les Halles was the economic heart of Paris, but also with the majority of Parisians, because the majority of Parisians coming here to shop for meat, fish, fruits, vegetable, etc. But everything changed again in the course of the 20th century. The government of the President Georges Pompidou in the 60s and 70s decided to move the Les Halles markets, which had remained virtually unchanged since the Middle Ages, to the periphery of Paris at Rungis, a little town of the south of the capital. So this decision was motivated by hygienic considerations and a desire to modernize the city. For example, the Centre Pompidou, the Pompidou Center, the National Museum of Contemporary Arts, was built not far from Saint-Eustache at the same time. And a huge gap, there is a huge gap between the iron architecture of the Second Empire and the new buildings around it. So here you have a painting of Les Halles at the 19th century. And sadly, after a huge controversy over the future of the Pavillon Baltard, they were finally demolished in the early 70s, creating a huge void in the center of Paris. And in French, we have a true expression, le trou des Halles. It was so horrendous, so horrific for the oldest Parisians to see this, that the expression stands. And we talk about now of le trou des Halles. In place of the Halles Baltard, a huge public transport network takes its place, along with 4-story underground shopping center also. And he was redeveloped in the 20s, in the very beginning of the 21st century. The mall continues the tradition of Les Halles and Saint-Eustache as a place of economic exchange and commerce, but not so poetic as far. So you could see here the aerial view of Le Jardin des Halles, the Halles Gardens, on the late 20th century. And now the new mall center, the shopping center on the bottom of the photo, Saint-Eustache on your right, and the Louvre, just a few meters of Saint-Eustache. But Saint-Eustache is more than just a monument in an old shopping district. It also has a very strong artistic aura. Indeed, Saint-Eustache is a place of an intense cultural life since the 18th century. And I would like to talk about Jean-Philippe Rameau, as you could see on the left of the slide, a famous music composers played at Saint-Eustache, especially on the pipe organ. His recitals were very famous in Paris, and as a talented musician, he was much appreciated when he played on the Grand Orgue of Saint-Eustache. A bust pays tribute to him on site in a chapel of the south side of Saint-Eustache, the chapel Sainte-Cécile, patron saint of the musicians. Also in the same chapel, of the Sainte-Cécile chapel, a plaque commemorates the burial of Mozart's mother at Saint-Eustache, Anne-Maria Mozart, as you could see on the right of the slide. She died of fever on July 4th in 1778 during a tour of Paris with her son, Amadeus Mozart, and her funeral took place in a church of Saint-Eustache in the presence of her son. Anna Maria's grave no longer exists, unfortunately, in the small cemetery next to Saint-Eustache, which disappeared in the 18th century, but this commemorative plaque was fixed in her memory. The church also boasts the largest organ owned by the city of Paris, and the second largest in France after Notre Dame. It boasts 8,000 pipes and was entirely rebuilt by Victor Baltard following a terrible fire and destroyed the old instruments in 1844. Music is still very much a part of parish life, with the numerous concerts and recordings of groups of musicians in the buildings. The church's organists also offer free concerts every Sunday afternoon. And last but not least, Saint-Eustache is a place for sacred, but also contemporary rock and electro music. The parish plays a full part in Paris' intense cultural life, integrating programs such as Nuit Blanche, Sleepless Nights, La Fête de la Musique, or the 36 Hours of Saint-Eustache, a music festival that keeps the music flowing day and night for a weekend in summer. Thank you very much. So after this brief overview of the history of the church and its neighborhood, I will now hand over to Véronique. We will tell you about the artistic masterpieces located at Saint-Eustache.
Thank you, Paul. So, from the moment they enter the church, parishioners and visitors alike can't escape the architecture, as Paul Percetti has shown you. Space, majestic, slenderness, luminosity. But what about the decor? Like many Parisian churches, the decor is very present. Murals, paintings, sculpture, woodwork, and liturgical furnishings are everywhere in the building, but subjugated to the architecture and concentrated in the chapels. Saint-Eustache doesn't give the impression of being highly decorated when you enter. And yet, if you take the time to wander around, you will discover a rich and varied decor spanning 600 years from the 15th to the 21st century. Indeed, the history of the building reveals its phases of construction and reconstruction, alterations and restorations, and important historical episodes such as the French Revolution, during which the church was looted, ransacked, and transformed into a temple of agriculture in 1795. The result is an heterogeneous decor made up of works that have been in place since their creation, but also from different decoration and restoration campaigns to which we must add acquisitions and donations right up to the 21st century. You can see on this picture the Chapelle Saint-Vincent-de-Paul, and inside you have murals of 17th century and the Kessaring triptych. It's a dialogue, a perpetual dialogue in intercontemporary art and ancient art. So I'm going to present the most important works that were already present in the church before the Revolution, then those that arrived after the Revolution to replace what had disappeared. Then we'll look at what was added during the 19th century, 20th century, and 21st century. This is St. John the Evangelist. All the remains of the previous church is the 15th century stone statue, St. John Evangelist. Formerly located outside, it is now installed on the overmantel of the south transept portal inside the church. Its dating is confirmed by its graceful silhouette, its expressive, wide, dropping-eyed face, framed by curly hair, and by the characteristic drapery with its simple folds, crossing softly and elegantly to the ground. This is one of the few remaining pieces from before the reconstruction. Decoration of the 17th century, we said grandeur and glory of the Grand Siècle, the great century. A number of works of the period of the building construction have survived. First and foremost are the stained glazed windows by painter and stained glaze master Antoine Soulignac. You can see Saint Jérôme and Saint Ambrose, and on the other Saint Thomas and Saint Philippe, and they are dated in 1631. 11 windows are decorated with the same type of stained glass. The axial bay depicts the risen Christ, Saint Agnes and Saint Eustache, the two saints to whom the church is dedicated. And on the side, and symmetrically distributed, the Latin church feathers and the apostles. One figure by bay or lancet, set against a highly original background of trompe-l'œil and grisaille architecture that appears to extend the architecture outside of the building. Antoine Soulignac perfectly masters the contribution of Italian Renaissance architectural representation and is driven by the characteristic desire of its time to bring more light into the building thanks to the use of mostly untinted glass. This is a very different from the stained glass of Middle Age. Nothing is known about Antoine Soulignac's life, and no other stained glass windows by him or that could be attributed to him have yet been identified. So the church features a large architectural, sculpted and painted high altar made famous by an engraving by Jean Marot. It was commissioned by Claude de Bullion, a keeper of the seals and superintendent of finance under Louis XIII, the 13th. The building contract was signed in 1634. And the plans are attributed to the famous architect Jacques Lemercier. It stood some 15 meters height. It's about 16 yards. And occupied almost the entire width of the church. It featured two paintings by Simon Vouet, the martyrdom of Saint Eustache and his family, and the apotheosis of Saint Eustache in his family in the upper section, and from 1635. The side bodies was decorated with two stone statues set in niches of Saint Louis and Saint Virgin Mary with the infant Jesus. In the upper section were two other statues, gilt wood angels, and also Saint Eustache and Saint Agnes. The majestic altar played an important role in the understanding of the building's volume. But it doesn't exist. It was destroyed, but a large high altar in this type, also painted by Simon Vouet, still exists in Paris. It's the altarpieces of Saint-Nicolas des Champs in the 3rd arrondissement. And the sculptor here is Jacques Sarrazin. The altarpiece of Saint Eustache, out of fashion, was destroyed in the 18th century, and only the works by Simon Vouet were preserved in a new, simpler composition. The two paintings were removed during the French Revolution. In 1809, the martyrdom of Saint Eustache and his family was sent to the Museum of Beaux-Arts in Nantes, while the other paintings was sold in 1810 to Cardinal Fesch, Napoleon I's cousin, who thus enriched his prestigious collection. Sold again in 1845, it was fortunately bought back in 1855 by the Préfecture de la Seine, by the town of Paris, and returned to the church. You can see, yes, this is a picture. We see the victorious Roman general, converted by the appearance of a stag bearing a luminous cross in its antlers, is condemned to be burned alive with his family for refusing to thank Jupiter. This is one of Simon Vouet's most brilliant works, admirable for its sense of composition, the organization of the figure in space, the harmony of the colors, the expressive power of the figures, and heightened dramatic feeling. This work is the pride of the parish. Mm-hmm. The other, in Nantes, it's very beautiful too, but it can be more in Saint Eustache, and the le curé, comment on dit,
the priest.
The priest is very.
He's very jealous about the Fine Art Museum of Nantes, but unfortunately, we cannot. Yeah.
Another important piece is the tomb of Jean-Baptiste Colbert by Antoine Coisevaux et Jean-Baptiste Tuby. I put some plans, and every picture you have a right point to show you
the localization of the paintings, stained glasses, statues, etc.
Voilà. Jean-Baptiste Colbert, Controller General of Finances, Secretary of State for the King's Household, and Secretary of State for the Navy, was one of the Saint Eustache's most prestigious parishioners. Churchwarden, parish council member, and it was also a donor. The fabric, or board of fabric in France, is responsible for the preservation and the upkeep of the church and for raising the necessary income. But this was before Revolution. Mm. Now it's
the city of Paris.
It's the city of Paris. On his death in 1883, his wife, Marie Charon, decided to have a tomb erected for him in the very heart of the building. His son, Jean-Baptiste Antoine Colbert, Marquis de Seignelay, died in 1690 and was buried next to his father. Charles Lebrun, King's painter, director of the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture and of the Manufacture Royale des Gobelins, appointed to this position by Colbert, which whom he has he was a favorite, and with whom he had worked for many years, drew the designs, and Antoine Coisevaux and Jean-Baptiste Tuby, famous sculptor of the king and close friends of Lebrun, executed the sculpture. The tomb was located under an arcade separating the chapel of the Virgin from the chapel of Notre-Dame des Vertus. This chapel doesn't exist today. Owned by Colbert. The arcade was lined with black and white marble slabs and bronze medallions depicting Joseph distributing grain to the people of Egypt, and Daniel transmitting King Darius' orders to the satraps and governors of Persia. This was a clear reference to the minister's duties. Garlands completed the design with Colbert's coats of arms surrounded by the collar of the Holy Spirit, a cross at the top, and smoking vases. Voilà. The white marble praying figure clad in the mantle and collar of Holy Spirit, kneeling on a black marble sarcophagus with the bronze. So you can see that Coisevaux is a very good portraitist, and he created the statue of Colbert, and you can see I put a buste, another portrait of Colbert by Antoine Coisevaux, and he did it 10 years before this tomb. You have details. You can see the
veins in the hand is marvelous.
Yes.
And so much details in the air.
Yes. And also the lace, the bloomers, and the two figures, Fidelity and Piety. In 1794, pieces of the monument were taken to Alexandre Lenoir's Musée des Monuments Français, where the remaining elements were immediately reassembled and restored. At the fabric request, the tomb was returned to the parish in 1817 and placed in the chapel of the Virgin, then moved in the chapel Saint-Louis de Gonzague, where it's now. Alors, despite its loss, this tomb remains one of the major monuments of 17th century French funerary art. It combines beautiful materials, theatrical figures, and realistic representation of the deceased. Another tomb of Marin Curot de la Chambre by Jean-Baptiste Tuby, too. Marin Curot de la Chambre is Louis XIV's physician and secret advisor. He's a writer, philosopher, and a member of the Royal Academy of Science. He was a frequent visitor to high society and became famous for his numerous treatises and speeches. A beautiful figure of immortality flies up holding the medallion with the portrait of the deceased. These decorative elements that completed the tomb disappeared during the French Revolution, like so many things. Now we have something of the 18th century. You have ici a churchwarden's pew. Voilà, it's a very difficult word.
Churchwarden's pew.
Donc, the parish occurred this fine object. In France, we say banc d'œuvre. It's highly unusual name as there are very few churches where you can still when you can still find such a piece. The church warden's pew is the place where the most important people in the parish, members of the fabric, sit during religious celebrations, just opposite the pulpit where the priest addresses the people. So there is about 20 seats, not more. But it's a very big honor to be prestigious to be there. It was executed by Pierre Lepôtre. Yes, and it's a very beautiful object. A very beautiful painting, Saint John the Baptist preaching in the desert, by François Lemoine. It's 1726. It's a private commissioned by the Morville family for their private chapel. And it's a very pictorial quality of painting, and so it was so beautiful that it was not destroyed during the Revolution, and it was reserved by Alexandre Lenoir, and it was sent to Versailles, and after he returned in the church in 1812. Alexandre Lenoir, if you don't know this man, was in charge in collecting church assets during the French Revolution. He saved many works from destruction and displayed them in a disused convent. Now this convent is the École des Beaux-Arts à Paris, in a short-lived museum that existed only from 1791 to 1816. The name is the Musée des Monuments Français, because he
reassembled all these monuments of his tomb, etc.
Yes. This painting is an ode to nature and youth in a still and subtle chromatic range characteristic of the period. Now we can see Saint Eustache during the French Revolution and just after. During the Revolution, the building was entirely and transformed into a temple of agriculture in 1795. When it was returned to worship in 1802, the parish priest of the time devoted considerable energy to bringing back the works that had left and to buying or commissioning new ones. His name was Abbé Bossu, and you can see the portrait of Abbé Pierre-Louis Bossu, and we thanks a lot
Yes.
Abbé Bossu. So, first example, Tobias and the Angel, circa 1575. It's a marvelous picture. Often this artist was a Manierist style. It's an Italian tableau and Napoleon the first took it when during the war,
the invasion of Italy,
and kept it. Voilà. So we have another like that. It's the Pilgrim of Emmaus of Peter Paul Rubens. It's a picture was produced before 1611 because we have it was engraved in this time, and we think that Rubens painted it during his staying in Italy. Between 16 and 1608, because there is a big influence of Caravage, and you can see that. And he saw Caravage pictures in paintings in Italy, and so he
reproduced this style in this painting.
The old woman is you can see the same old woman on pictures of Caravage. Other examples, the burial of Christ of Luca Giordano, sized in 1806. It's in Napoleon inventory, and it was deposited in Saint Eustache in 1812. It's a very sophisticated composition, very, very beautiful. Other examples with sculpture, the Virgin and Child in marble, 1748. This statue was not in the original decor. It was commissioned by the Comte d'Argenson, a minister, for the chapel of the Virgin in the Église des Invalides. And after, there was another Virgin with Child in Saint Eustache, but she disappeared during the Revolution. So Abbé Bossu said, I want another Virgin and Child, and I want another statue. So
he took it from the Invalid, or
right, he gets this one from the Invalid. It's a Jean-Baptiste Pigalle. It's a very beautiful sculpture. So, t'en as sauté une, je crois. Ah non. Abbé Bossu aussi, bought some picture. You have, this is the adoration of the shepherds par Étienne de la Vallée-Poussin, who also Moses striking the rock by Nicolas René Jolin, or in 1808 he bought at the saloon this picture of Alexandre Caminade. It's inspired from,
by the Domenico.
Ouais, the Domenico
painting.
Martyrium, which is in Bologna. Bologna. So, as Paul showed you, there was a big organ fire who destroyed a lot of things, and all was black in the church. So, architect Victor Baltard undertook the restoration of the church. And on this occasion, he discovered the 17th century wall paintings in some chapel, hidden by whitewash, most likely in the 18th century, when people were looking for light and the witness of stone, and destroying or hiding all decoration deemed too colorful or intrusive. He had them removed and restored by painters who cleaned, restored, repainted, and completed the missing scenes. These interventions were therefore quite invasive, but it's good to have this picture, this painting. So you have the picture. See, you can see all the chapels who have still murals of 17th century. This is an example, the chapel of the Holy Angel, painted by Antoine Ricard and restored and completed by Sébastien Cornu. This is it's a very good documented decoration, because we have the contract with the painter, but this painter, we don't know everything about it, and we don't know another murals painting of Antoine Ricard. Another chapels is Saint Joseph chapels. The Jesus on the road with the Emmaus pilgrims and the Assumption of Virgin Mary, and the others. You have before restoration and after restoration, and the other side is the same, the resurrection of Jesus among the sleeping guards, before restoration and after restoration, and this was restored thanks to the World Monument Fund. So we don't know who painted that, but we know there was two painters, perhaps more, but two, because the styles between left and right are very different, like you can see on these two details. This is a vault before restoration and after. And this is funny details after. You can see the Assumption of the Virgin. This is the mark of his
foot,
foot.
of her foot,
Feet.
of her foot or feet. Sorry.
Right, feet.
Mhm.
And you know, appuie.
Ouais.
Ah non. Voilà. It's like
A mark.
a mark of
her-
shoes.
ouais.
But where are the shoes? Because she has no shoes. Voilà. This is a transept, very decorated by Baltar, and with painting of Signol, and a lot of sculpture and ceramics and
Stained glasses.
stained glasses and gold and
This
voilà.
is an entire decor of the
Yes,
transept.
yes. This is the other side with the resurrection of Christ, and you can see another funny details that Singles always does the Christ with red hair. It's the only one to do that. And we have another painting of Single in Saint-Sulpice, and he has also red hair. Virgin Chapel was painted by Thomas Couture. And Thomas Couture is
He's famous because
he's famous because he was teacher at l'École des Beaux-Arts, and he was the teacher of Eugène Manet. So he's very famous for that. So you can see the pictures. He couldn't paint on the wall. It was not his technique, so he painted on canvas and canvas on the wall. Voilà. Very beautiful stained glass by Charles Champignon. He was in the Universal Exhibition of 1889. And it's education of Saint Louis with his mother, Blanche de Castille. And you can see some details. You can see he's listening. You can see it's a little boy because the foot are not on the floor. You can see a reliquary. This reliquary exists is in the Museum of Cluny, which is a museum of the Middle Age in Paris. And you can see
all the books.
Who remember that Saint Louis developed the university with Robert de Sorbonne, and this was the Sorbonne College, and Alexandre Gady told you all about it. This is an example of a chapel of the 19th century, Saint Andrew. It was painted by Isidore Peirce, and Isidore Peirce was the painter of the Opéra Garnier in the
staircase.
Yes,
of the Opéra Garnier.
Voilà. These chapels, there is every year some butchers who come and in a procession, and they have a mass every year.
Mm-hmm.
Ouais. This is stained glass. It's
of this chapel.
Mm-hmm. It's a woman who did it. It's Adeline Hébert Stevens, and Saint John and Saint Andrew are the two patrons of the butchers. But because there was a fire inside in 1989, it's a new decor by John Armleder in 2020, 00, and avec poor paintings who are under the paintings of Isidore Peirce, and altar in glass, and a box, and every year the butcher put in the box a paper with the list of all the members of their society who died during the
last year.
Yes. This is a very famous sculpture in Saint Eustache. the departure of fruits and vegetables from the heart of Paris in 1969, because it was a traumatism to have the
demolition of the Les Halles Baltard.
Baltard.
As you could see there also
yes,
on the left and on the right of the sculptures.
Yes, and they are always now in Rungis. It's outside of Paris. So he shows Robert Mason. It was an English artist, and so all the commerçants, they are merchandiser. They are going out and they are very sad, and they have all their
very sadly walk away from Paris.
Yes.
To Rungis.
Voilà. So it's I saw to this sculpture plaster of Honoré Daumier, Fugitives. It's after a revolution of 1848, and it's the same thing. They are all going out. And Mason was very comment dire. He was particularly attached to his work and regularly visited Saint-Eustache to check on its condition and cleanliness until he's dead. The Life of Christ in bronze are very famous from Kessaring. Kessaring wanted to give these pieces to Saint-Eustache because Saint-Eustache was very helpful to the AIDS during the AIDS periods, epidemic. And so after his death, it's Foundation John Lennon and Yoko Ono who gave these pieces to Saint-Eustache. And to finish, because it's 20, we have the recently acquisition of Saint-Eustache, two oil on canvas from Dewadi Ajab about conversion of St. Paul. They are in when you enter in the facade, by the facade, you can see them before
enter in the nave.
In the nave.
In the nave.
And,
in the nave, sorry.
And so it's two citations of the Evangels. La précédente, attends, excuse-moi, c'est I fell to the ground and heard a voice, and here I am, Lord. And it's a very beautiful painting. It's very interesting to show how contemporary art can
reinterpret this symbol and this.
And this work is a part of a great tradition of historical and religious painting. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Veronique and Paul, for that excellent presentation with some beautiful photographs. And I found the plan of the interior of the church was very helpful, so we could follow you around to the different chapels. Quite remarkable how many modern works of art there are at Saint-Eustache. And it also reminds me about the debate going on now about whether there should be modern stained glass windows put in to Notre Dame de Paris. Obviously, that debate was resolved at Saint-Eustache to welcome not only modern stained glass, but sculptures and that very modern photo or paintings at the end there, to be sure. One of the things that struck me, that I'd like to ask you about is, when you look at Saint-Eustache, you don't realize that it's not a perfectly regular shape. But when you see the plan of all the chapels, you see that on the south side of the nave, it's not straight.
Yes, absolutely, because you had an ancient road just next to the church, and the church, how do you say?
The angle changed to accommodate.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
So
which
there is a chapel which is so little that there is no painting inside.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a stained glass and a plaque to tell us
So
the
thank
story
you,
and to
so thank you, City of Paris, for the restoration in the 19th century. Just that,
just
because
that.
she's too little to have some murals or other things.
yeah, okay, so it's not an official chapel. It's just a decor along the
Yes.
south side of the nave, which is great. Also, it was quite remarkable, Paul, when you showed the plan de Turgot from 1739. It dramatically showed that the church was entirely surrounded by buildings, except only for the western facade. And maybe there was an entrance on somewhere I didn't notice. So it was truly built surrounded by.
Absolutely, on the very dense hypercenter of Paris.
Yeah. So, and we don't realize that today, of course, because now it's completely, all of those buildings were removed. First, as you mentioned, by the Marché des Pouvoirs, which I'd never heard of, and then by Les Halles. They got rid of all the buildings, at least on the south side, and part of the north side, and the inn. So it's a very different impression you get going to the chapel today. And that was very clear by comparing the Plan de Turgot with the photographs, aerial photographs from today. So that was terrific, very helpful. One of the questions that we would like to pursue. So you focused on the chapels, Veronique. Now, just backing up a little bit, would you please explain to us who built the chapels?
Chapel. So that was the donors of the church who initiated the paintings in the chapels.
Comment dire, ça s'est construit en même temps.
So,
mais ils ont donné de l'argent pour ça, donc du coup ça leur appartenait, mais ça n'a pas été construit
so
une par une.
The chapel was not built one by one. It was designed
by the architect.
By the architect at the same time, but the donors donated monies sometimes, and the family to the fabrics.
So they have
the property of the chapel.
Yes.
And for Colbert, for example.
Colbert, Richelieu.
Also,
Cardinal de Gondi,
etc. All the nobles of the neighborhood of Saint-Eustache owned a chapel and decorated the chapel by.
Because Saint-Eustache was near the Louvre, and all the ministers and
the
big
courts,
family were in this
area.
So,
well, you highlighted in your talk the existence of what was called the warden's pew.
Yes, the banc d'œuvre.
Which I had never seen before. Was that a common phenomenon in churches before the revolution?
Yes. Yes, but after they disappeared because the revolution thought that it was not equal.
It's not equal because just a few members of the parish can enter in that space. And the most richer, the most richer.
So you mentioned that members of the fabrique would be seated there. Would you please explain what the fabrique was?
J'avais dit la définition.
So, fabrique is a sort of an association, which contributes to restore, to maintain the church in a good shape.
Yes.
Before the French Revolution. So it was an association of mostly the most rich men and women of the church who donated to maintain the good shape of the church.
Okay. So is that the only surviving banc d'œuvre
No, we have
Oh, we have one in Saint-Sulpice.
we have one in Saint-Sulpice, but much
Il est moins beau.
ouais,
Il est moins beau, mais il n'est pas
Ouais.
moins grand.
So less
Okay.
beautiful than Saint-Eustache. And we have also one, but hidden. It was in Saint-Gervais-Saint-Protais, a
Yes.
church next to the City Hall of Paris. And it was how do you say? It was disappeared during the 60s, I think. No, in the 80s. The 80s. Because the nuns, the church was not a parish, but a sort of convent. The nuns doesn't want it.
Okay.
Disappeared.
So another thing that disappeared along the way in most churches is the rood screen. Jubilé, comment on dit? Jubilé?
Le jubilé?
Le jubilé. Was there a rood screen, a jubilé at Saint-Eustache?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Separating the choir.
Le jubilé. Le jubilé, yes, absolutely. Yeah, jubilé. Yes,
No.
yes.
Jubilé.
No.
Bah non.
Since the Middle Ages, no. He completely gone. He completely disappeared. Because
the church is
the church
elle a été construite trop tard pour un jubilé.
the church was built during the transition between the Gothic architecture and Renaissance style, and this is at this period, at this moment of the history of France, that the jubé completely disappeared from all of the churches. So they never existed.
Never existed at Saint-Eustache.
Okay, well that's very interesting. And as you pointed out, this it is a transitional period between Gothic and Renaissance. I guess the construction took place off and on during the Wars of Religion, which are there any pure Renaissance churches in Paris?
Est-ce qu'on a une vraiment pure
No.
Renaissance? No. You have a mixed of Gothic and Renaissance architecture at the always. You have, for example, just behind the Panthéon, you have Saint-Étienne-du-Mont.
Yes.
Magnificent church, but the facade is Renaissance, but the inside, and you have a jubé.
The
yes.
only one in Paris is
in
Saint-Étienne-du-Mont, in stone, a beautiful jubé.
You have a facade also of Saint-Gervais-Saint-Protais, the church just behind the City Hall of Paris, and this facade was built by quel architecte? Colomb de Brosse, non?
Ah oui, Salomon de Brosse.
Salomon de Brosse, with a 3 order of column, Doric, Ionic, and Corinthians column.
Okay, très bien. So how long did this latest restoration, is restoration still going on at Saint-Eustache?
Yeah, absolutely. Véronique restored 1 or 2 chapels per year. With donators, we will thank you very much for this generosity. And if we talk about architecture, the facade, the west facade, was restored just a few years ago.
Oh yes, she was finished in 2023.
Voilà. And the south facade was restored 10 years ago. So
yes,
and now we have a big project for the organ pipes, for the Grand Orgue of Saint-Eustache.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to have to wrap it up here, but let me say, first of all, that as you pointed out, Paul, it's in the neighborhood has much changed over the hundreds of years, but it is a wonderful neighborhood today. And Saint-Eustache is definitely to be visited, perhaps at the same time as you go to the Bourse de Commerce with the Pinot collection. It's also spectacular right nearby. And particularly to go at the Fête de la Musique at the end of, let's see, March, it's June 21st.
Yes.
Something like that, where, as Patricia Bona helpfully pointed out, there are 36 hours of uninterrupted concerts.
Absolutely.
So you can show up at 3 in.the and there will be music being played. And then you can go next door and have a soupe à l'oignon at the what's the name of the restaurant? The Cochon.
Ah, le pied de
Ah,
cochon. Le
the
pied de
pied de
cochon.
cochon.
Next door. Very,
I
very
think
good.
you know well Paris.
Okay. So thank you very much, Veronique and Paul, for
Thank
your
you.
excellent presentation. We appreciate it. And I would like it, since this is our last lecture in the series, I'd particularly like to thank Mathilde Auger, Executive Director of the French affiliate of World Monuments Fund, for putting together this series of 5 wonderful monuments for us in the World Monuments in France series. I'd like to thank our producer, Ryan Waldron, and to the Alliance Française de Chicago interns, Maud de Vinquière, Margot Bonca, and Fontine Blic, and to Stephanie Grosjean at the Alliance Française Miami Metro for their invaluable technical assistance. Thank you, Patricia Bonat, for your helpful chats that have accompanied these lectures this winter, and to our partners for support. This concludes this winter's World Monuments in Paris series. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again next winter for a new series. But wait, there will be another episode on Thursday, April 10th. Put it on your calendars, about the magnificent Chartres Cathedral. So you have competition from Chartres, Paul and Veronique. They have some pretty good stained glass windows too. A little older.
Yeah, oldest.
A little older. But we will send you information about the program on April 10th in due course. In the meantime, merci encore à Paul et Véronique. Et
Thank you
au
so
revoir.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Goodbye. Je vais là, non?